My name is Godfrey Anderson. Many people know me as Paul, which is a nickname I was given in Jamaica, as many of us were. I was born in 1958 and I came to England when I was around 7 years old. Right, my life in Jamaica was somewhat idyllic in terms of the limited memory that I have of it. What I do know is that it was basically growing up with my aunt and uncle, who, as my parents had left to come to the UK to seek a better life. So I have no recollection of them as a very young child. I just remember my aunt and uncle, and in particular my uncle, who treated me very well, almost as like a prince. And you know, I remember being in a situation where, when a horse gave birth to a foal, it was mine. When a cow gave birth to a calf, it was mine. You know, having dogs, you know, animals, going to market, you know, with my aunt, after they harvested pimento and this kind of stuff, going to market in Kingston, the capital of Jamaica. Just lots of great things, you know, spending lots of time outside with my brothers and my sister and cousins and so on. So my life in Jamaica was, as a very young boy, was quite idyllic. I lived in an area called Landui, which is basically a small village up in the mountains in the parish of St. Thomas. We lived close to the Alice River, which I remember as a child being a raging torrent. You know, it was, I specifically remember when it used to rain and the water would come down the mountains and flood the river and, you know, flood the village and take away animals and people and so on, having to be rescued. You know, this brown torrent, which actually left an impression on me because I became somewhat scared of water, you know, like swimming pools and that kind of stuff. So the area that I lived in was very rural, very, very rural, not particularly wealthy. But, you know, a lot of our family lived in the same village in and around there. My favourite memory of Jamaica is, funnily enough, receiving toys to play with, because we never had really much toys, and those toys in particular were airplanes, you know, toy airplanes that you sort of wind up and let go. But that could have been, that you could have had that toy anywhere in the world. But if you ask me for my fondest memory, that is my fondest memory of sitting out on the veranda playing with those toys, and I remember that quite well. And also playing with the animals, you know, the dogs and so on, that kind of thing. My uncle was he was a carpenter or a joiner, and he was just a very sort of, I remember him being sort of quite a chilled man, a lovely man, took me everywhere, you know, treated me really well. I just remember kind of being his favourite, really. And so I got looked after really well. My aunt, I was a bit scared of her because she was really what I would describe as a wicked person. She was my mother's sister. Given that my mother had left us in her care, the way she treated my siblings, and in particular, one of them in particular, but all of them, was bordering on abusive. And it was a bit odd, these two people, the difference between them was like night and day, you know? In terms of getting ready to come to England, I have a recollection of going to take passport photos with my siblings. Bearing in mind I was probably 6, turning 7 at this time. A lot of it's not clear, but I do kind of remember the photos. I also remember, because I had toy planes, as I said, my favourite toy was toy aeroplanes, wind-up aeroplanes. And I remember being told, you're going to go on one of those, you will fly on one of those, to England and this kind of stuff. So I remember that. I remember driving to the airport. I remember it being quite sad, because obviously for my uncle it was quite a sad thing that I was going, and I knew that I was going, but I didn't really know what that meant, that I would never see him again. I'd never have any communication with him again, nothing. I remember me and my brother, Andy, we travelled together. My older sister and older brother, Bev, and my, Jim, they'd left for England earlier, so they were already in England. So I travelled with Andy on BOAC, British Overseas Airways Corporation, which has somehow over the years ended up moulded into BA, British Airways, in one way, shape or form. But that used to be the national carrier. And we came on that. We arrived at London Heathrow on a very grey, misty, foggy October day. It was cold, grey. The overriding impression it had on me when I stepped out of that airport and looked around was how grey it was. This country that was supposed to be the land of milk and honey and the streets of paved gold was just grey. And there were all these things, these structures, one after the other, with these things on the roof, these round things, and smoke coming out of them, which were obviously the houses, all these terraced houses and stuff, with coal being burnt, which was the primary fuel then, coal and paraffin. And, just seeing that, and the smog or fog, the smog is a mixture of the coal, the burn off from the coal and fog. And London in those days used to be plagued with smog. It was very polluted. So those were my memories of coming to England, and then going to meet my siblings and so on. But obviously, the key thing is, I was now in the care of these adults who I didn't know from Adam. I didn't know them. I had no, they were just a couple of adult people who really meant absolutely nothing to me because I didn't know them. My first school in England was Gladstone Park primary school, but it was primary, just going into juniors. I liked school. I mean, I liked meeting lots of people. For me, it was quite different meeting mainly white kids and black kids like myself, but also white kids. I'd never had any interaction with any of them. I made friends with one boy in particular called Kenneth, and some of the friends that I made from the time I came from Jamaica and went to school are still friends that I have today. We went on to secondary school through our adult lives, and we're still friends. But school life was, I didn't really understand a lot of things at school, so I'd muck about. I'd be one of those kids who'd be crawling around on the floor under the desks, and in those days, teachers would be quite happy to let you just do that sort of thing so they get on with the other kids, you know? Yeah, on one occasion, I was crawling under the table in a class, and Mrs. Smith, the head teacher, came in to speak with the class teacher, and she spotted me. And then she said to me, right, go and sit outside my office. So I went and sat outside her office. When she came back, she got out books and papers and showed me various things and asked me lots of questions. After which she determined and said, "I think you're a very clever boy, and you need to be in a better class." And she then put me into the highest streamed class for that year. My high school experience starts really with the fact that I went to a non-denominational boys' school in Neasden in northwest London. It was one of the few non-denominational schools. In other words, it wasn't mixed with any church or religion. It was just a boys' comprehensive. Because we were kind of a clique, the teachers tended to allow us as a group, who'd come up together from primary school, to stick together. We did acquire one or two people from other schools, so we were like a fairly large group of black boys, right? And they were quite happy to let us just do our thing, play marbles, play coins or whatever. We were just kind of left to do our own thing. In other words, from the time we started school, it was quite obvious that they had no expectations of us. We were going to see through our time there, and that was it, right? As time went on, some of us were pushed towards sport, and some of us were pushed towards things like woodwork, metalwork, gymnastics, football, and so on. And some people went on to do very well. Some people even went on to become professional sports people. As time went on in school, suddenly we had Asians come to school, a lot of Asian kids. And there were some white kids who we, as the black kids, got on quite well with. They were skinheads. They were the skinheads, and sometimes we've moved with them. Sometimes, mixed, in other words, because they liked our music and stuff like that. What we had though was, when the Asian kids came, you had a proliferation of racism, because the skinheads were into bashing the P word, right? And so it was really bad for those Asian kids, because a lot of them got beaten up and attacked and so on, just for being Asian. And it was almost like a sport for them to go around beating up these kids. So you started to see that whilst that never happened with us, with them, because they would say things like, "You're all right, but we hate them because this, that, and the other," right? But you could see that difference just in colour and culture, and the treatment was unacceptable. Even at that young age, you knew it was wrong, And that happened a lot in school. The teachers didn't seem to do much about it. As we got older, so first year wasn't so bad. Second year at secondary school and third year onwards, I remember they started to put most of us black kids in the class of a couple of the teachers who were known to be quite strict. So we had Mr. And what he would do, he'd call 4 or 5 of us up in the morning and give us a slipper. So it would be what you'd call now trainers or what have you. We'd have to bend over and we'd get 6 whacks of that on our bottom, hard whacks. And that would be, I know you're going to do something today, so we might as well get it over with at the beginning of the day. So we would get beat at the beginning of the day because he knew we were going to do something right. I used to think it was funny, and to some extent we bantered with him as well because it was a way of getting by with him. We never saw it as being a racist thing or anything like that. It was just that we were the bad boys. So, you know, it was like a mark of recognition and achievement that you're the bad boys, so you're getting some licks before the day starts. So it was a badge of honor in some sort of way, because he was an art teacher. So in terms of the art and the work that he'd have us do, he would push us quite a lot. And then you had Mr. as well, who was strict. But back in the day, when you did something wrong, even though you had those licks in the morning, those, you know, you'd get your if you did something wrong during the day, you'd get the cane. So that's a cane, you know, a stick. And you'd have to go, and usually the head of your year would do it. So, or the head teacher even. And you'd have to bend over. Some of them would even make you put your pants down. And they would beat you with this stick. This is known as getting 6 of the best. You know, you'd go to get 6 of the best, and that would be 6 whacks with a cane, right? And I mean, I got caned on several occasions at school, and you know, if my parents found out, especially my father, would be like, "Oh, I got caned. You must have done something wrong. You must have done something wrong, or they're not gonna give you the cane." So it wasn't a thing like your parents would be, "What? You know, let me get up to school and sort it out." In those days, the parents saw it very much that if you got corporal punishment, it's known as corporal punishment, then you must have been doing something wrong. So we went through that era, and then we had new teachers coming in. There seemed to be an expansion of the teachers. And from that point onwards, that was after the Asian kids came, from that point onwards, it wasn't a banter kind of thing with teachers like Mr. or Mr. We had other teachers who would be saying things to us like, "All right, jungle bunnies, get in a class," you know, and calling us really racist, offensive things. I remember going to complain with 3 or 4 of my friends to the head teacher. At the time, we had a head teacher called Mr. And we went and we said, "Look, you know, this teacher keeps telling us to go back to the jungle and calling us jungle bunnies and, you know, other names that I don't want to say on camera, and, you know, quite nasty racial epithets, you know, and so on." And I remember Miss, "No, don't take no notice of that. You know, it's just, he's just probably just a little bit annoyed with you. Don't worry about it. You know, you're taking these things too seriously." You know, dismissing us with his hand, you know, taking it too seriously, you know, it doesn't mean anything. That was how the schools dealt with those sort of issues. And from that point onwards, there was quite a bit of racism in the noticeable, more noticeable, I should say, racism in the whole structure of the school. For example, we were told things like, you know, as soon as you're legally able to leave, we're going to kick you out. We weren't doing anything wrong. They just didn't really want us to do CSEs or GCEs then. They call it different things now, or CSEs. Because we were only destined really to become, at best, tradesmen, you know, like, you know, a car mechanic, or we were never seen to be worthy of any academic input. So they didn't want us in the 6th form, in other words. very few of us got through to sixth form. A lot of times, the teachers didn't really make any effort with us. So it'd be like, okay, guys, you go to the back over there. We would be able to play cards. We'd be able to gamble, We would be able to play dominoes. We would be able to do all sorts of things. So we were just sent to the back, do what you want, but just don't disturb us. Us being the other. We were all the black boys, and we were told to do our thing in the corner because really they weren't going to waste any effort. And that used to happen a lot. And one day, in the English literature class, the teacher was talking about a book, and he wanted to introduce it to the class. And he started doing a synopsis of this book. So I said, well, this happened and that happened. And then the teacher would come back and say, and this and that. And when she was kidnapped, what happened? And this. I'd read the book, and he could not believe that I'd read the book. And from then on, my experience in the English literature class changed dramatically. I wasn't being told to go to the back and so on, because he then asked me what other books I'd read. And he couldn't believe some of the books that I'd read, because I liked reading. I loved reading. It was something my eldest brother had introduced me to, took me to a library, joined me in the library. One of the first things he ever did with me when I came to this country is take me to a library and join me out, right? So it was a seismic change in terms of how I would view, because then this teacher would tell other teachers. So in the history lesson, that started to change for me as well. So that was my experience at school. As things turned out, what happened later on was that I left school, I developed myself in various ways, and became a governor of my daughter's school. And also I became the chairman of the Parent Teachers Association. And then I was invited to join the governors of the school I went to, the John Kelly Boys School. And I took up that opportunity, became a governor of the school, became the chairman of governors of the school. There were still teachers there who had been there as young men and women from the time I was there, who were shocked that I'd now come back and was chair, because in their minds, and one of them told me, they had written all of us off. I didn't really have that many hobbies. What my thing was reading. I loved to read, so I read everything: newspapers, magazines, books. One day, in the first year of secondary school, a card dropped through the letterbox, and it was asking if you wanted to be on telly. And so I thought, oh, that's good. So I filled in this form, and it asked the question. It's, like name, address, sex, and posted this card off. And then some people came to my house, and my father talked to my father, and I, what's going on? And then these people came in, and they said that because I'd answered, they knew what had happened and how I'd answered it, and it was so funny. They had to come and see me and see if I was suitable, And so I signed up for one of the few things I remember my dad actually doing for me personally. He signed me up. He took me to Chiswick, and we joined the drama school, the Fielding Stage School, who at the time was quite a good stage school. A lot of people on telly were at this stage school. And I used to go on a Saturday with my friend Gino. And we used to meet up and get in the bus and go and do stage school. So that's what I got into. And I also did a few bits and pieces. I got a job. One of the most notable jobs that I got was BBC Player of the Month, Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. The star of that was Maggie Smith, who's now Dame Maggie Smith, and a wealth of big stars who were in it, and I was her servant. I used to follow her around all over the place. Things like that. So, you know, being on telly was like, you know, it was a big thing and so on. It was a tiny role, but that's the sort of thing I was interested in. A few of us had part-time jobs. Back in the day, you would either have a milk round in the morning or a paper round, or you deliver groceries after school. They used to have these special bicycles. You put the grocery boxes in and at the front, and you'd ride and go and deliver the groceries. And I used to do I tried the milk round, but in the mornings it was so cold. Back then it was so cold, you'd hold the milk bottle and it would stick to your hand. Because the milk was in bottles then, and it would just stick to your hand. You just couldn't get the bottle off your hand. It was just way too cold. I couldn't hack it. So I got a job after school delivering groceries for a Jewish deli. And I used to go deliver all these groceries because all the customers were Jewish, basically. And all these Jewish women, they absolutely loved me. I just felt very, it made you feel good because you'd go to them, they'd be ever so nice and very complimentary. They'd give you tip, they'd give you gift, all sorts of things, right? And I remember the people who ran it, they were such nice people. This was my first experience of white people who were saying to me, you know, you are going to be a tycoon. You're going to be something special. When you get old, you're going to be... People will want to fall over themselves to be around you and so on. And it was very much like that. And they were just so encouraging. And I'd not experienced that in my own community or any other community. And that was amazing. And I always remember that. I remember those people every day. My teenage years, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. As I got older, into older teenage years, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I didn't feel that I had any sort of structure, guidance. So I kind of drifted a lot, did a lot of drifting from one thing to another. In those days when you left school, you could get a job today, start today, lunchtime, you could quit and start a different job in the afternoon. It was like that. There were jobs everywhere, right? Of course, the good jobs, when you would walk in as a black person, they'd say, oh, sorry, the job's gone, right? But if it's a factory job and so on, you're always welcome, okay? So, but I managed to get an office job, and it was a junior clerk at the North Thames Gas Board in Willesden. Now, the gas board is now what we call British Gas, right? But each region had a gas board. And they built their headquarters in Willesden. It was a really plush place. And I just walked in and thought, let me see if I can get... And I got a job. And to show how unusual it was back then, everyone was so amazed that I'd got myself an office job with a gas board, you know? It was like it was like a big thing where, you know, why should it be? It's a junior office clerk. The thing is with that job is it was very boring. And even though my mother worked there, she worked in the canteen. She was a cook. Even though my mother worked there, there was no guidance. You were just filing, and it was extremely boring. But what it did teach me was that actually I could apply for anything. I went through quite a period of going from job to job, periods of unemployment. You know, I bored for a lot of the time, things I did. So at one stage I thought, you know, I'm going to work for myself. And tried all sorts of things, you know, all sorts of things that some worked a bit, most didn't. And then I kind of got lucky. I got lucky and found things that were cutting edge, you know, that other people weren't, lots of other people weren't doing. So I was the expert. I was an expert because most people didn't know. Like voicemail, I was one of the pioneers of introducing voicemail. Looking back in terms of notable achievements, things that I've done business in a number of countries around the world. I've owned businesses in the USA and other countries. I've been involved in sports, in football, in horse racing. I've been involved in just a wide range of other activities that at quite a high level. I mean, I've been involved with some of the people at the very top of those sports. For example, in horse racing, been involved with, you know, the Arab, the UAE royal family, you know, Sheikh. I've been involved here with and some other members of the royal family. In terms of business, wow, I've been involved with really a very wide range of people. Some people who I knew that weren't particularly successful when I knew them, but then went on to be successful. But yeah, I've been involved in a very wide range of activities. You know, I've run a business in Israel, you know, in Tel Aviv, and in Beersheba. You know, that's a challenge as well in itself. This a really wide range of activities. One piece of advice I'd give to young people now is if you want to do something for yourself, go and learn about basic business before you get involved in it. Do some sort of internship as well. Learn about it. Don't just do it, because if you've got a family network or a network of friends and family who can help you, that's great. But if you don't learn about it before, you know, because if you get lucky, you want to make the best of it. Okay, so, you know, I had ups and downs, so go up, go down, then go up again, then go down. I remember on one occasion going to Jamaica, going to where I come from, seeing some guys sitting out, just chilling, you know. And it turned out that I was somehow related to these guys. And I remember talking to them and so on, and then they were really, really envious of the fact that I had left and gone to England, and they wanted to go to foreign, which means go abroad. But they never got the opportunity. And I always remember thinking, there but for the grace of God go I. That if it wasn't for the grace of God, I would be sitting there with them like that. From what they were telling me, there wasn't a lot going on for them, and they felt that had they had that opportunity, their lives would be much better. But in a lot of ways, I look back on it and think, yeah, of course it was a great opportunity for me to come to UK. I remember at my father's funeral, one of the things that I said was that the one thing he gave me that I treasure beyond anything else was opportunity. It gave me opportunity, right? By bringing me here. It gave me something greater than anything else he could have given me. That was opportunity. And I respect him for that.